Hello everyone, and welcome to 404s of the World, a spin-off series of remarkable engines where I briefly covered the history of an engine numbered 404 in 4 minutes and 4 seconds. This episode of 404s of the World will feature an engine from one of the smallest and most famous Class 1s in the Midwest, the Monon. This railroad's 404 was a late model of a successful series from the American Locomotive Works, or ALCO, and despite its early flaws, it still lasted on to other railroads while being frequently photographed during its early days. So with that said, here is the story of Monon 404. Our story once again starts in the 1960s where passenger rail is in decline, but freight is keeping many of these railroads afloat, with the big three manufacturers still building stronger freight engines for various railroads. In response to GE's U-Boat series, ALCO introduced their own line of six-axle road engines as the next evolution of their Century series, with the first model in the six-axle series being the C628, built in 1963, with the C standing for Century series, 6 for 6 axles, and 28 for 2800 horsepower. The C628 was the most numerous of the three six-axle Century series engines, as a total of 186 of these locomotives were produced, 9 of which being sent to the Monon, who numbered them 400 to 408, with 404, the locomotive to be focused on, being built right in the middle of the build order in March 1964, almost 60 years after when this video was made. Despite their power, the Monon didn't purchase too many of these ALCOs as they already had a pretty diverse fleet of a handful of various engines, thus making these diesels the largest engines and only six-axle power in the roster. Although, with great power comes great responsibility, as even though 404 was one of the largest engines railroad ever rostered, and was more than powerful enough to haul mainline freight runs from Chicago to Indianapolis and Louisville, these engines were too heavy for their own good, as the Monon constantly complained of the C628 placing too much wear to the tracks, a problem made worse for any railroad who rostered them since track maintenance was already poor due to low revenue. Despite these engines being well photographed on the railroad, the Monon ultimately returned all of their C628s to ALCO only 3 years after entering service in 1967. But thankfully, since these were relatively new engines, they were quickly bought up by the Lehigh Valley Railroad, who was more used to heavier engines for mainline runs and already purchased the C628 a few years prior. Once on the Lehigh Valley, 404 was renumbered to 637 and was initially painted in black and white before being repainted in red and gold in 1973, as it performed much better on the LV mainline between Jersey City and Buffalo. Technically, this engine even lasted on the Conrail as it was renumbered to 6733, but it only received CR stencils and spent most of its time as storage surplus before finally being scrapped in 1978. Even though this 404 didn't spend much time with its original owner or number, Monon 404 still managed to literally and figuratively leave its mark on the Monon as one of their largest engines in a diverse roster and managed to find better life using its strength on the Lehigh Valley. Thank you all for watching this episode of 404s in the World, and this episode's Honorable 404 goes to K4 Class Pacific number 404, renumbered to 431. Although this engine only ran on the small but mighty Monon for 3 years, it still managed to be well photographed along with the rest of the railroad's diverse roster, and ended up hauling mainline freight for 3 well-known railroads, and kept their operations afloat in the midst of economic downturn. Thank you again for watching. Credit for all the photos used go to their respective photographers, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Have a good day.